Hey everybody, hope you've had a really decent week. So, this week in the workshop, what have we been up to? So we got the lathe set up and I did my first bit of turning since I did that little introductory course a little while ago, and yeah, it was good fun. This is a very basic lathe. Some of you may have used it in the past. Um, it's on a couple of pipes. It's mounted there and it takes a little while to move things around because when you want to adjust things, there's no speedy settings. You've got to use a spanner to adjust things. Likewise here, you've got to grab an Allen T-bar and adjust them around like that. If you want to adjust the speed, there's only 3 of them. You get in there and move some V-belts. But that aside, it's fine. I'm still working on the slowest speed going. I was told, and it might be different, that don't go fast speeds until you feel comfortable. And this is all I ended up doing. But what I did practice was did a bit of stuff with parting tools and whatever else and messed around with a scraper that I bought. But one thing I didn't do on the little course was working with the skew. Now, this is dreadful turning. This is only the 3rd piece of wood I have to show for anything that I've ever done with it. But the skew chisel, to my mind, as someone who knows nothing about wood turning, feels a bit like using a hand plane. So instead of having to rely on abrasives, the better you get with something like a skew, the less you might need to rely on abrasives. I've got some various old tools here. This is a big old skew, and a lot of these belong to great grandparents and grandparents, and they all seem to work pretty well. I did buy some new stuff because I was advised to by the person I took the course with, but just thought I'd show you this big daddy. So that's a that's a gouge welded to a piece of steel pipe, but whoever used it last, you can see it's all ground properly on the end. It did its job, and I might use it for fun. But you shouldn't do that. You should only buy proper approved tools and use them sensibly. Got the face guard, that seems completely logical, and I've got a little dust extractor turning up that I can link up the bandsaw, and I'll probably make a little bit of a hood affair down here just to take away the worst of the dust. But the nice thing is, trying to work with that skew is trying to, again, you're trying to make shavings rather than scraping and making loads of dust. These chisels here, these real cheap ones, came with the lathe that I bought. Lathe was 100 quid. Again, I was advised that those tools are pretty rubbish, but you know, it is what it is. Again, these are old skews and whatnot that my granddad had, and one of the first things I'm probably going to do, it's got a nice old skew there and the handle's gone, is I'll probably try and turn myself up a handle, because they had just become very old and perished. I wouldn't be surprised if my granddad may have turned some of these himself. You can see how close it was to the bark. And they're so old and they've been hanging around in our old damp workshop for quite a while that the bugs have got the best of them. But I would say, if you, I think maybe the phrase is called a flat woodworker, that means you don't do turning basically. I think maybe give it a go. You might, if you've watched any of my other videos before, you'll know that I made some simple stools, and I want to move that up into making some simple chairs. But what I was never really satisfied with was the round tenons. The tenon rounder that I bought was fine. I had previously owned a Veritas thing that you kind of make, basically it's an oversized pencil sharpener, and then you've got to ream the holes. But a lot of the chairs that I like looking at don't have that feature. They just have a round tenon, hence why I bought the tenon rounder. But then you're really fixed with that thing, trying to get it to match exactly a certain drill bit and other methods I want to use. So by using a lathe, you can set a tool rest and just make a round tenon on the end of something. You don't have to do a turned leg, you know. And again, that whole thing cost me 100 quid, including some very bad, not good turning tools. But You know, I think the tenon rounder from Ashley Isles, and a very good price, or Ray Isles, whoever makes them. I think it's getting up there. And again, the Veritas tenon rounder or tenon pointer, whatever you're going to call them. You add one of those up with a reamer, again, you're over 100 quid. For me, the versatility of having a lathe in my home workshop now means that I can, all of a sudden there's more possibilities. I mean, those beads, no one's going to get excited about that. But first thing the children said when I took the bit of work next door was, is that a piece of a chair? So, you know, it gives you that variety. You don't have to just make octagonal legs and all the rest of it. You can branch out a bit and do something different. And that's something I do want to try. One of the tough things, I don't know if any of you have got kids and you've wanted to maybe get them into a bit of woodworking, trying to find something that's actually going to hold their attention can be tricky. You don't want to force anybody to do stuff that they're not going to really like. But with something like a lathe, and I'm not an expert, but I think I can show somebody how to do some basic stuff quite safely. You can see something that even if it's just a simple spindle, you go like, oh wow, I can quickly get results. And kids' attention spans, you know, probably always been the same. It's, you know, if you're playing a game of football or sport, it's all quite instant. Whereas woodworking or something like that, you've got to be a bit more methodical. So yeah, it was a plan this weekend to get in here with one of the kids and do it, but I had the kitchen ceiling to paint, a few other jobs, and like anything, time just slips away. But importantly, making a few shavings, which is good. I've got a little project that I'll be working on during the week. No clue when I'll be finished. That's the curse of the home woodworker, and that doesn't matter because I just drop onto it as and when I can and try and have a bit of fun. But what I'm visualising is with the various scraps that I found not found and you were there, but got them down from the loft when the Christmas decorations went back up. It's just like a little chest come desk tidy thing, and I was reflecting on it as I was doing various things today, and I'm going to do one here in cherry and try and make obviously going to do a good job of that as best I can. And I'm thinking a way that might be a nice way where you could use limited materials, but also challenge yourself a little bit, because I'm going to try, this might go out the window, have a little drawer, then like a chest on the top of it, almost like a mule chest, I think might be the correct terminology for it, but in miniature. And that's the thing, quite often the small jobs like that will take just as long as a big one, because you've still got all the joints, the time goes in on the corners, and because it's so small and you can look at it with such scrutiny, you know, you're going to be really careful with something. Quite often when it's got a bit more scale, you can be, can't be rough, that would be inappropriate, but you can, I don't know, you don't notice it as much. You know, the tolerances I don't think are so fine, but you know, you see some people doing these wonderful delicate boxes and things of that nature. There's no room to hide at all. You know, it's either right or it's wrong. But a bigger piece of furniture, just the presence of the piece can help you a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to work through some of that. And I haven't really read much in the way of woodworking magazines recently. I've nearly come to the end of a book, which I'll share with you soon enough. And a lot of it is because I know, you know, they've got to make money, makes sense, but so many advertisements in them these days that you, and to be fair, you look at the old, say I've got quite a few old copies of the Woodworker, a British magazine, even back in the day they were full of adverts, and the old Woodworker back in like the 50s and 60s, you'd get to an article and it would be like, it would end and you'd have to continue on page 56, you'd actually like forward or back to find the other end of the article. So at least the modern magazines aren't like that. But it's just a lot of advertisements in there, and it's just, sometimes it can be a bit off-putting. But I made the effort to read one, actually cancelled my subscription to Fine Woodworking, mainly because I enjoy reading books a little more. I think they do a great job, and there's no criticism of them, it's making the best use of my money. But it had a piece in there from a woodworker, I can't remember her name, but professional furniture maker. And what was quite interesting to read is, although I'm not a full-time furniture maker, I'm a joiner, so I make things like windows, doors, stairs. We do make a bit of furniture, but you know, I'm not someone who can do a beautiful freehand design, and I I don't have the portfolio of fine furniture to convince somebody to place an order with me. But one piece that really rang home in there, and if you ever decide that you want to do, if you're watching this as just an amateur and you think, oh, I would like to do it for pay, one of the most telling things was that when she did some internship with a professional, and she mentioned about how you don't have to do every job that's offered to you. And I've had a few of those situations at work recently, and that really only comes with experience. I think when you're more inexperienced, you think, oh, I need to do everything, and you've got to work to everyone else's whim. And I think one of the most nuanced and difficult things to learn is when to say no and to read other people's intentions. It's a tricky one, that one, but when she mentioned that you don't have to do every job that comes through the door, it's like, yeah, I resonate with that. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I hope you've all had a great week. And yeah, lathe, that one's super basic, but for spindle work, I'm a long way away from wanting to do any plates or hollow stuff. That's getting really into a bit of a rabbit hole, and I'm well away from that. But to complement a bit of furniture making, £100 for a lathe, maybe one of those is worth a couple £100 depending on when you get where you get one. A few turning tools. I think the versatility something like that could bring to something like chairs and stools and other embellishments to woodworking in general could be worth it. You might go through a stage of not using it for 6 or 7 months, and then it becomes super useful again. Certainly not going to be upgrading that bad boy anytime soon, but yeah, think about it. And the skew chisel, because there's so many horror stories about it, I was quite intimidated, and I didn't get to, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't get to use one on the day that I had. But it's surprising. I think if you've done any degree of flat woodworking and you've got to use a skew and you appreciate grain direction, and even if also a benefit if you've used machines, because you've got something rotating and introducing it all. I'm not saying I'm good with a skew, but I think for my third attempt at turning something, it's not covered in catches, I didn't frighten myself, and you could feel the grain running, and you just get that natural feel with it. It's so versatile. I think you could probably do a hell of a lot of stuff with probably just 3 or 4 things, but the skew is super versatile, and it's a little bit more practice. I haven't got that completely smooth graduation everywhere, which is something I want to work off, because like my great granddad said, you want to finish off the tools. I never heard that because he was done before I was born, but that's what Dad said anyway. So yeah, that's always the aim, try and finish off the tools. There's nothing wrong with grabbing the abrasive when you need it, but it shows a bit of an understanding of your planes, your chisels, turning tools, whatever. It saves time as well. If you can get a good finish off your tools, then why the hell not. That's enough jibber jabber for a minute. I'll get so far with this, and there'll be a little box to make with little drawers, and there'll be some dovetails going on. I might do a little dovetail video. I don't think the world needs any more dovetail videos, but I'll do mine because why the hell not. And yeah, thanks for tuning in as always, and I hope you have a really good week.